So it's a body pillow of Sora, and there's like 25 different zippers on it, and each zipper contains one of the games.
It's the Kingdom Hearts Advent Calendar.
So we're talking remakes and remasters. Let's do a quick definition of it. For me, a remaster has been, you obviously are updating a game with better visuals or better quality of life stuff. So you're making the game look a little better so that the people of the current generation can stand to look at it. Or you're taking sort of an old favorite game and giving it a really impressive coat of paint. And quality of life stuff would be stuff like now you can save anywhere, or one of my favorite ones in Final Fantasy remasters is the ability to like speed up time. So does that, anything I missed there for what you think?
Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty reasonable. I also would add on that I think it's important that it also retains like a lot of the source material. It's not necessarily fully replaced, but it's cleaned up or upsampled, or maybe they have the original assets and they just they leave them at their source quality or compress them less, that sort of thing.
Well, let's talk about remake versus remaster. And I think that this is it's fun to talk about. And I think that I had understood in my mind what a remake and a remaster was. But then as things go on, it obviously gets muddled. And they are just terms. And they don't really have to have a set definition. But I've always thought of a remaster as, like you said, is it the original game, but it just looks better? And sometimes you can do that if you put a PS3 game. Let's look at Shadow of the Colossus. Remastering that on the PS3, it's the same basic game. I'm assuming like everything under the hood is the same. It just runs better. It's not going to be a clunky, 15 frames per second. It can run at a solid 30 or 60, and it's going to look better. Now, to confuse that, on PS4, Shadow of the Colossus remaster is still, everything is exactly the same. They just really upgraded it. Now, do they just kind of slap new visuals on the same core game underneath, or do they redo that? Like, when does that become a remake?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you have to swap out something like the engine. I don't know. I kept thinking about things like Yakuza and Yakuza Kiwami, because they call it a remaster or a remake, and when you look back at it, to me it just looks, it's like a lot of quality of life changes and some really impressive visuals, but ultimately it's the exact same game, just like in the case of Shadow of Colossus.
So when I hear the term remaster, I think that should hold true to it being the exact same game, but either you've taken the original, like in the case of a PS2 game, to a PS3, or if there's sort of one generation difference, I think you can take basically the same game and you can just upgrade the visuals. Last of Us remastered on PS4. But when there's more of a difference, even though it's still one generation, when they did the first Super Mario All-Stars, those games were pretty much exactly the same. Everything was in the same spot, Mario 1, 2, 3, but they were completely overhauled with new visuals. And I mean, I don't know the coding. I don't know if the same game is running underneath. The same thing with the Shadow Colossus on PS4, but it looks completely different. And that's more of I don't think there's much they could do to improve it. But I would say that if I'm going to advertise this as a remaster, and this has me thinking from Final Fantasy VII Remake, what are you selling me? If I hear remaster, I think it should be exactly the same game. And then remake is when it tends to become more blurred. Like the Yakuza Kiwami, it's definitely totally new visuals, but it's, like you said, it's completely faithful to that original experience.
Exactly.
So then you got something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where I guess the name is in the title of what they did. To me, that's more like a reboot, because you're using some of the same characters, or I don't know, a soft reboot or whatever it is. To me, that felt like if I went into that thinking I was going to get a Yakuza Kiwami, but it was a Final Fantasy VII Kiwami, it's not. It's this whole other... It's basically a brand new imagining of that world and that game. And there are some things that are note for note copied, but that's not what the game is all about.
Yeah, I like the idea that in some cases a remake is taking the game and just making it go along an entirely different axis from whatever the original was. It's like like one of the things I was thinking of was Link's Awakening, and this is a little bit more of a simple remake in the way they did it, but it's going from 2D when it was originally released on Game Boy to 3D, and they're also changing the entire look of it through like that sort of tilt shift lens effect, so it kind of has like that toy-like appearance, and it makes it feel like an entirely different game, but it's still pretty much the same thing, but it the appearance is just so radically different.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the best versions of a remaster remake. I mean, I guess you would call that a remake because everything is brand new there, but the core experience, and most things are probably all in the same spot. The core experience of what it is to play that game is the same. It's almost, I think, for me, like a good remaster should feel like this is how I remembered the game, and this is how I would like to experience the game now, where something like Final Fantasy VII Remake has made me feel like I don't like the idea of you remaking a game. If you want to do your own thing, then do your own thing. Like, get your own property. And I mean, that game I take kind of personally, and I didn't have a great experience with that, with the remake, because I was expecting it to be like the Link's Awakening remaster, where it was, that's a remake, but to me it just feels like a really super polished remaster where they did bring in new visual elements, but the game is still there. They don't pull a bait and switch on what the game is going to be.
Or maybe even the Kiwami remake, since that's kind of, that's like, if you look, I was actually looking this a little bit before we were recording, but the side-by-side comparisons of the PS2 graphics versus PS4 for Kiwami and Kiwami 2, and it's just, it's so different, like, you know, as you would expect. And it's kind of like what I would have thought had I been looking forward to Final Fantasy VII and having played it in the past and then wanting to play the remake. I would have kind of been anticipating something along those lines as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think people, like I said, with the memory, when you imagine back to those older games, it's you. Because at the time when Yakuza came out on the PS2, it was probably pretty cutting edge. It probably felt very realistic. So in your mind's eye, in your memory of it, you feel like you played this very realistic crime drama. And now you're just updating that realism. Whereas, I mean, when I went back to play Final Fantasy VII, the PlayStation 4 port, so I played that in like 2015 or 2016, I was actually really shocked, because I hadn't played the game since the 90s, that the most of the images for the characters, the models, they look like Lego characters. They don't really, they just kind of had these like blockheads with incredibly, I mean, they were like stick figure faces of just a drawn smile and a little bit of detail in the eyes. And I had remembered them a lot different, probably because there's like the cutscene version of them and there's the Battlefield version of them. So I was just hoping to have an update, keep the game the same, because that is a big part of the game experience is can be playing it the way it was originally meant to be played. You know, when I think of playing Final Fantasy VII now, I enjoy that it was a crazy mix of FMV, the CGI, and pre-rendered backgrounds, which I was happy that they put some pre-rendered backgrounds in 7 Remake, but it was just like a completely different vision of it.
I was kind of just thinking a little bit earlier, and while you were talking, you know, I wonder if there's a good litmus test that you can use while you're playing to determine, you know, am I playing a remake or am I playing a remaster? And I was thinking of like that button that they have in Halo 2.
Yeah.
The one for the Master Chief Collection where you can flash back to the old graphics and the new graphics. If you can add a button like that in the game to be able to do that, I feel like you're probably playing a remaster, perhaps.
That's a great test, and they have that on Grim Fandango. I think you have to go to the options to do it, but Halo is another great example of a remaster where a lot of people are shocked when they look at the way it used to look, because when they played it at the time, especially the original Xbox being such a powerful console for some people that, you know, weren't playing cutting edge games on the PC at the time, it was super impressive. So to have that quick look back. So I guess that would be a remaster where even if there are better visuals, I think it's still holding as true as possible to the original game. whereas a remake, you're gonna like, okay, what about the Crash trilogy, the Insane trilogy or whatever? I mean, to me, that's kind of like right in the middle of a remaster remake. It's trying to be as true to possible as the beginning games, but as the original games. But I'm assuming they must have had to go in to take something from the PS1 to the PS4. You have to probably rebuild everything from the ground up, right?
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, there might be some stuff you can salvage. There's certain things like, how do jump physics behave? Like
exactly,
like Mario,
that's the most important thing.
The feel can be retained, and you can actually, because that stuff is quantifiable. I mean, it's going to behave a certain way. There's certainly hacks in video games that developers have to take advantage of in order to do certain things, and those may not exist in future hardware. So there's some things that might have to be kind of worked around. I mean, I could see some of it. It's a little bit of both.
That's a big one for me, is how does it physically feel to play, especially for games that are built on gameplay and fast reflexes. I remember there even being some complaints about the Super Mario All-Stars, how the controls didn't have that exact feel of how the first Mario did, and they were like maybe a bit more slippery, where on the NES it was maybe a bit more precise, a bit more of the ones and zeros, like maybe the limited tech. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they added a bit of a flourish or something to be able to recapture what it was that made the first Mario game so spectacular in terms of how it felt to jump. I mean, that was the first thing I noticed about games, because growing up playing an NES was that Mario feels amazing. All of these other platform side-scrolling games that are based on whatever TV or movie was popular and made by LGN feel like garbage in comparison. And so we're trying to retain that is super important. So like when you think about, we were talking about, okay, like a good remaster and a bad remaster. It's funny when sometimes they'll do a remaster, like I think the Silent Hill collection was one where they end up like introducing even more problems. And I would assume that comes where you're either trying to, I don't know, like you're trying to cheap out in a way where you're not taking the amount of time. You're thinking that this is going to be a quick cash grab. We take a game people like and sell it to them again. And maybe they like struggle bringing the original through. Maybe they don't want to remake it from the ground up. So it seems like it kind of skirts the line of feeling like an easy cash grab when Blue Point does it, and also can be something that can be dangerous if you're not prepared to put in the resources to properly do it.
Sure. I haven't played the Silent Hill franchise, so it's hard for me to comment on that, but one of the more topical ones right now is Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning.
Okay.
Because the original game was released and then the developer went under, and so there wasn't really any attention received very much afterward, as with regard to things like they didn't have a field of view slider, the camera controls just felt kind of bad, and I'm pretty sure the original one is unplayable on 4K monitors, so it was not future proof at all. And so they actually got picked up by THQ Nordic, and I think Kaiko, there's a developer that was working on the remastered version of it, and it came out just last week or a little bit around there, maybe the week before, and it had a kind of bad reception because you got a lot of people who are very disappointed. They find a lot of new bugs and old bugs still present in the game. It's unclear how long they actually spent working on this thing, and whether it's really a cash grab or if it's just this thing is old. We can't. There's only so much we can do. I don't know how pressed for time they were when they were developing this, but you see some stuff like that, and it's a very different feeling from like the really good remasters.
Yeah, and that's where it starts to feel like a cash grab when they can't even put in the time and the resources to come up with something smooth. Because we've seen it a lot. It seems like this generation, especially with the COVID situation, we've seen other studios talk about gearing up for more remasters, and it's something we've seen with movies where they're constantly remaking Jurassic Park, Star Wars, Star Trek, everything possible. There's a new Bill and Ted movie. it costs so much money and resources to fully complete one of these things, a movie or a video game, that they're going with a safe bet. They know that nostalgia is important, where if you were a kid when this came out, by now you are an adult with a lot of disposable income, and they've seen that nostalgia sells. And it can, in the case of movies, we've seen that it ends to kind of, it's like eating itself, the industry, where they're not leaving enough room for original ideas, and they're kind of forgetting that the reason this was great was because it was an original idea. With games, it seems like it's not really slowing down the rate of great new games coming out. Although I will argue that the amount of resources Square Enix must have put into the 7 remake, you probably just could have made, and to make 3 of them, you could have just made Final Fantasy 16. And then you could have probably spent way less on making a slightly slicker version of 7 remastered and sold just as well. But I think with that is that they took too long. So it ended up being, I don't know, maybe they felt like, how can we possibly make this PS1 game look impressive enough that people want to buy it again without it feels like that's the only way they know how to do something, is to kind of try to overwhelm you with visuals.
Yeah, there's like an ever escalating expectation as to what the quality should be for a game, and you know, you've got to sell it for $60, and yeah, it's like this. It's kind of a weird circumstance. These forces that they have to work under.
Well, you had posed a good question. Should a remaster be the same price as the original game?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I think most people would probably say they want to get it cheaper. Like, for example, Kingdoms of Amalur, I think it's reselling at like $40. You know, I don't remember what it sold for initially. I assume $60. Yeah, you know, I would think most people expect to get a little bit of a discount because it's a historical thing, and you know, and they don't want to necessarily pay for a product twice from what, you know, for that, because that's what it ends up feeling like sometimes for people who've already played the original.
Yeah, I would feel the formula for me is, if the game was of the last generation, so that means I can still get the current version, the non-remastered version, for probably quite cheap because it's going to be on sale. So for you to put out a remaster just one generation later, especially like why I feel Nintendo's ports of the Wii U to the Switch have been really just a terrible value proposition to charge full price for them. I would want it to be sort of like a half price thing. Half price to maybe 2/3 on if they really added a lot. Once you go maybe 2 or 3 generations back,
like Demon Souls.
Yeah, so now Demon Souls, that is going to take a lot of work, and I think it's quite obvious when you look at it that that's a great one where I would feel totally fine paying full price for it, because it's obvious they didn't just bump it up. Now, so that one to me definitely feels worth it. Now, when I think about Dark Souls 1 remastered, so that's just one generation forward. That's a game is such a great candidate for remaster because it's historically important and it is a great playing game, and it had some really bad frame rate issues. So to go back and clean all that up and preserve that for the next generation, I can't remember what that debuted at. I think I would pay full price for that. Probably because it's so good, but I also would be happy if it was maybe 2/3 of half price.
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable. I don't know that I have a really fixed rule as to whether or not I'm going to pay full price or wait for a discount on a game that's been remastered. I mean, a lot of it probably goes back to just whether I've played it or not. If it's the first time I've played it, you know, I'm perfectly fine purchasing it at whatever the full price would be, whatever it was originally released at. But
that's what Nintendo's hoping with their Switch ports of Wii U games, where if this is your first time, do you feel comfortable paying full price? Also, quick aside, Dark Souls was released for $40. The remaster was $40.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Except for the Switch version, I think that was full price.
Of course.
Yeah. Huh. So, actually, and another question you had posed was, how will the backwards compatibility affect remastering? I mean, a lot of when I think of like buying Sleeping Dogs, a PS3 game on my PS4, it was to play that. Or there were a few PS2 games that I would buy on the PS4 that were kind of remasters because they hadn't really figured out a backwards compatibility. But if I could just play, I mean, you look at what Xbox was doing. You can take the 360 version of, say, Final Fantasy 13, play it on an Xbox One X, and the thing will upscale automatically. So you're giving your fan base, your player base, a free remaster at that point. Now that, to me, that feels too good to be true, and it would be something I'd be willing to pay for, but it's like an incredible value proposition.
Right. So like essentially advanced consoles are going to be able to do all these things automatically. You're getting a free remaster without having to, just from owning the original game physically. I mean, that's a pretty great proposition. And I think that's what you're going to see going forward too.
Absolutely. Now, before we start talking about the future of it, is there anything we wanted to go over with this remaster remake, the battle of that? Well, I guess it definitely just comes down to, it's a semantics thing. I mean, you can call it a remaster, you can call it a remake. It doesn't really matter. They're basically taking a game and they're going to try to bring it up to modern standards, and whatever state the game was in, how many generations and what kind of hardware it was played on before, is going to dictate how they can bring that up to the modern standard. Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, remaster, remake, reboot. I think they're all just points in a continuum. And sometimes games fall a little bit closer to one than the other, or sometimes they're like right in the middle of 2 points. So, I think you have it right.
Some really great ones are when I saw, like, say, StarCraft Remastered. It's like you're taking the core game and you're just bringing it up, and you're making sure that it runs on everything, and you're making it look nice. And you don't really have to add anything else. I mean, Microsoft is going crazy with Age of Empires, where I feel like they're going to start making more old-style Age of Empires games just to remaster them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an easy sell.
Yeah, and that clicks on like the nostalgia of it, because those games were really important landmarks at the time. I mean, there were RTS games before StarCraft and Age of Empires, but they still came out when that was really exploding, and when I think they were like, sort of like the high watermark of what that genre was doing at the time.
Yeah, and it's not always easy getting those running. I mean, especially if you have the old physical copies that you originally bought. It's not always fun trying to get that stuff to work on a modern operating system.
No, that's how we see GOG. That was basically their whole business model is, we'll sell you a very reasonably priced version of this old game and it'll work.
Yep. And, I didn't even think to talk about the whole Grand Theft Auto 5 situation. Okay. Like, that's spanning 3 generations of consoles, and they're still remastering it and adding stuff each time.
Right. Now, when I think of Grand Theft Auto 5, that is, when I think of like, when we're looking forward, what games are going to be the potential, that was the original idea for this conversation, was we're seeing all the nostalgic remasters now. What will be the ones from this generation that are going to go forward? And I think the first one we see is Grand Theft Auto 5. Oh, yeah. And I feel like Grand Theft Auto 5 is an online platform. It's a money-making thing that they're just going to keep tacking things on. And one of the ones I considered could be a future candidate is, I feel like Rocket League is such a strong idea that it's probably going to just keep going and keep going. And maybe in 5 years, there's going to be a remaster where buy the new version of Rocket League Season 25 or whatever, or Fortnite, or PUBG, and included is going to be a remastered version of original vanilla Rocket League, or of Fortnite, or of PUBG. I think PUBG is a good candidate because the game didn't look great when it first came out. So that's a game that I think could definitely use a new coat of paint.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've got, because some of the games you're talking about are free to play, and some of them you're talking about are something I have to buy into. Like
Right.
Fortnite's going to be a free-to-play one, so like that's they were never asking for a cost to begin with.
Yeah, so they're going to do that. Well, what they could do is if you sign up for like the season pass or something, maybe it'll include a version of classic Fortnite that you can play with your friends and do custom. See, I would like that. For me, in 5 years, if Fortnite said, pay the $20 to $25 for a season pass, I have no idea what these things cost. And we'll give you classic Fortnite remastered, and you can do custom battle royales with your friends. I would say, here, I'd like prepay you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Overwatch has something kind of like that in the sense that, I mean, I don't know if they have plans on bringing their games, to the next console generation, but at least on PC, they allow you to run custom servers, and you can kind of configure the rules. I don't know if they have, I don't really have if they have it to the extent that you can actually just recreate vanilla original experience, and even excluding like all the all the new characters that were added since. But that would be kind of interesting. Kind of reminds me of World of Warcraft Classic.
Right, where you can just simplify it down for the people that don't want to have to remember all this new meta stuff for all the new characters. They can just like for an old person saying, back in my day, it was more about skill. We didn't have to worry about all these other crazy new characters. I mean, you could probably see that maybe with like League of Legends and Dota moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you want to hit on your, I see you have a list of 9 possible remasters.
I was just basically digging through some old games from this past generation. I don't know, it's kind of like it had to have the right feel, to kind of see like how old is this game? What are the graphics like? What's the likelihood of them just porting it just so that they can have it on another platform? I mean, I know some stuff is already going to just simply be backward compatible. So, for example, we don't need Bloodborne on PS5 because you can play the PS4 version, but we could sell a new version of it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go through this. Let's go through it as sort of like a top 10 list with a few extras. And you just spoiled number 1, so we'll do a reverse order on that.
I didn't have them in any particular order, really. It was just more like a few of them scattered around.
Okay, so not a top 10, but a 10. Now, I'll put in not the outliers, but sort of like runner-ups would be, say, StarCraft, Rocket League, PUBG, Fortnite, online games that are going to exist with a platform.
Warframe,
now,
yeah.
I'm going to, Warframe. People are going to be dying to play that. Buy the remaster of Warframe and get a remaster of Knack at no charge. We'll give you $10. So my 10th one that I'm going to add onto this list is going to be Metal Gear Solid 4. And I think that Metal Gear Solid's got a huge following, big brand, Konami loves money, and Metal Gear Solid 4 runs like garbage and is exclusive to the PS3. I can't believe that they didn't remaster it for the PS4, but I could see them at a board meeting, Konami looking around going like, what else do we have? Oh yeah, this game. Okay, yeah, sure. Put it on the PS5.
Yeah, I actually was kind of glancing at the Metal Gear Solid titles, having not really been... I haven't really had much experience with Metal Gear Solid franchise, so I kind of figured you might pick up on one of those. And one of those definitely looks like a candidate to me.
I think it'd be good. The other remasters have been done really well. There's actually, for some reason, there was a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake on the GameCube called Twin Snakes, which I think was sort of a response of Kojima blaming the translator on the first game. He's got sort of there's a controversial history of his translators and him having falling outs. And then there was also a PC version remastering Metal Gear Solid 1 called the Integral, which is a fantastic, very simple smoothing up of that game. But and then 2 and 3 are fantastic remasters where they fix the frame rate, bring it up to 60, and they're great. Do you want to go with number 2 on your list there?
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't know. We didn't really talk very much about the first one, but Bloodborne
Oh,
itself,
sure. Bloodborne, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that there's lots of rumors already regarding a remaster coming, but I don't know, I haven't seen anything really confirming that yet, but I would not be surprised since I don't know what else they could really add too much to that. Like, I mean, improved assets, better frame rate, maybe better draw distance or something. But that does seem like a decent candidate since that was one of those games that came out just a little, about a year into the life of the PS4.
Yeah, it was very that was sort of like one of the first big impressive games you could get. I mean, it started off running at 30 frames per second on sort of the base PS4. I feel like when I had Bloodborne on my PS4 Pro and ran it in enhanced mode and boost mode, that it was I felt like it was running at 60 FPS, but I could be totally wrong about that. So, I mean, other than bringing you like total locked in 60, because for an action game, that's super important. And I guess you could bump it up to 4K, possibly, and maybe add some like online stuff, because the people that play these games, the long tail of them are the hardcore online people that want to have like maybe tournaments or more stuff you can do with your friends, and I don't know, maybe like a map creator or something.
Yeah, I think they could also add like I don't know about map creator, but maybe. I think just some kind of extra content pack would be good too. It doesn't, I mean, a lot of times these kind of things, it's going to be hard to integrate them into the story since the game was pretty much complete when it came out and when they finished their original DLC.
Yeah.
They have to come up with something that's sort of tangential, but still gives you some kind of fun experience.
Yeah, I mean, you could just have another little area to explore that has a self-contained story. Maybe I know that the Dark Souls story and Bloodborne is, for the people that have really looked into it and read all the item descriptions, I've heard a lot of praise about how it tells a very complete story that feels esoteric, but definitely feels very, it's not like a random piece of lore everywhere. So maybe people who are scholars of the story would say that's impossible. You couldn't have a standalone, but I think you could. I think you could just add in something else and tell another little self-contained arc.
And sort of tangentially related to this too is the number 2 choice would have also been Dark Souls 3, which I believe was a year after Bloodborne came out, something like that. It was shortly thereafter, and it's kind of, I think, similar enough in the line of Bloodborne that it's going to basically follow our same discussion over that, where it's just old enough that it would be nice to have it kind of ported to the new platform. They might be able to improve some texture quality, just simple things like that. Some stuff might even just be handled from, upscaling. I don't know.
Well, and that was another game that was 30 frames per second, and you could bump that part up. It would be cool if you could buy a From Software All-Stars package where you could get all those games and Bloodborne together, and even Sekiro. But I think just about the whole publisher wars, the reason that Bloodborne exists is because Sony wanted to have their own. So that is not going to happen, unfortunately.
Yep.
For me, I would have no desire to go back to Dark Souls 3. Those games for me are like, I love playing it from start to finish, and it's a struggle. And then when I'm done, that was nice. It's like trying to be a boxer and getting back into game shape or something, back into fighting shape.
Yeah, the remasters of games like that are just going to be, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who like to just continuously go back through them, but I think mostly new players are going to be the ones to benefit most.
Yeah, I think that like when you look at Dark Souls 1, the first time I played it was a remaster of it. And I think definitely Demon Souls, for a lot of people that have just fallen in love with Dark Souls 1 moving forward, for them to be able to go back and see where it really all came from and fix the clunkiness that had plagued the original game. I think that's going to be a really killer remaster. So number 3 on your list you had was Doom. Yeah,
Doom 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess kind of had this feeling that that's one of those, like, it's been a little bit of time as well. I'm not sure how much they could probably come up with some new, like you were talking about mapping packs and stuff like that. Like, I think games like Doom are really accessible for that kind of stuff, like where you want to add some extra content that's not necessarily story based or has any kind of impact to the game as it stood before.
Yeah. And and actually, the way that we're discussing this right now, I feel that I've been coming at it from an angle of what would make me want to rebuy it right now. When really the whole point is that when you think of a StarCraft remaster, I don't need them to add anything else. It's just that, or Age of Empires. It's more of I want to recreate that feeling of the first time I played it, but it just looks a little better. So I do find it kind of hard to imagine what is gaming going to look like, say, in 5 years, 10 years. What is 8K, 16K, or something that we can't even fathom right now? Or virtual reality. Maybe virtual reality will become a norm. Or 3D, like 3D projection of stuff where you don't even need a TV. And then to take all those old games and put them into that visual situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was just thinking back to, I miss having access to like games where I could do things like mod maps and do all this stuff myself. And yeah, Doom is one of those for me. And I was just thinking about all the releases we've seen since too. It's just I'm surprised they wouldn't have that on the new gen as well, like a 2-pack Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, something like that.
A Doom All Stars.
Well, I think for number 4, I put Prey on here because I was thinking that's a really atmospheric game, and it kind of like I could imagine adding things like ray tracing support, or mapping for that. It could benefit a lot from those just better effects from newer hardware, pretty much.
Yeah, because I agree. Prey, its strength is its atmosphere, and that it has that sort of arcane, unique visual style, but it's not super flashy. And there are some more interesting things I think you could do, especially with maybe to add some more detail to the enemies, the environments, the space around you, and the weapons and things like that. Like ways you could just kind of make it really shimmer on the screen. Whereas Arcane, I like that they have their own style, but their stuff tends to have kind of a flatter, sort of like softer look to it, where and it works really well, where they get really great performance. I never really remember playing those games and suffering any kind of slowdown because they need to render 50 million blades of grass. Instead, they go for like very big, exaggerated, almost cartoony, grotesque ways of showing their form of realism.
Sure.
Yeah. So number 50, this one I could definitely see getting a remaster because it's the whole franchise has been such a flagship for Sony, and there was the collection of the first 3 games put together. But God of War 2018, God of War 4, I could definitely see that one coming forward, just because it was I think for a lot of people that was a highlight of the generation so far. I haven't played it, but I'm interested in giving it a shot.
Oh yeah, I mean, it does make me wonder if Sony's going to have some kind of like Sony highlights package. Like now the more I'm thinking of these all-stars ideas, like I could see something like that.
I know. I feel like even with Prey, I'd buy like a Prey and Dishonored all-stars pack. If Arcane wanted to bundle all that stuff together, I'd love it.
So number 6 I had on there was Neo.
Yeah. So why are you thinking Neo?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it just kind of it seemed like people really like that game. It seems like it has quite a following, and I don't know. I just it just seemed like it would fit for that generational bridge. Like if they were to release a Neo and Neo 2 in preparation for having some kind of third game. I don't know if there's a third game upcoming, but usually that's when you see that kind of thing. You'll have like the second game not remastered, first game gets remastered, and then you have the third one come out as a separate title.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of the concrete sales figures around Neo, but to me it seems like it has a pretty good cult following because there are some things that it takes directly from Dark Souls, but I think the way that it handles its how fast it feels, the way it's divided up into levels, it definitely has more of that kind of like Namco arcadey Ninja Gaiden feel to it as opposed to Dark Souls, which is more of like slightly slower and a bit more immersive in dealing with like the immersion of it and the atmosphere. Whereas Neo is like hard hitting, a little camp. Things can be kind of sillier, but
A little more arcadey.
yeah. Yeah, and it's a totally I could not beat Neo, whereas the Dark Souls games I can eventually hack my way through, but Neo required a totally different, felt like a different skill set to me. So I could see that one coming forward, and especially because it seems like I know Neo 2 has a lot of customization going on, and people seem to be pretty, at least the people I talked to are very excited about that. And I could see maybe like remaster of Neo. Now you can have make him look like anything you want. Import your costume design from Neo 2 into Neo 1. That could be a big one. Number 7. Kingdom Hearts 3. I think... Oh, yeah. I feel like Nomura just haunts my dreams, where the first half of this episode, I feel like every paragraph I ended off with was like bashing Final Fantasy VII Remake and how that felt. And it's him. It's getting into my brain. I mean, of course this is going to get remastered. He has remastered everything up to this point. Although, wouldn't it just be the most Nomura thing if out of the 27 Kingdom Hearts games that have constantly been remixed and super shuffled, if this is the one he doesn't do?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of that absurdity. This is like a case of... It's almost separate from all the other remasters, and only because... there's just like a historical precedent, and if that were denied, that would be quite interesting. If he
does not put out a final remaster collection that is just called Kingdom Hearts Complete,
but you also have to have a clever acronym so that it forms some other word.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a pleb. He's not like he's operating at a completely different level. This is how I would do the Steelbook version. It would be, when you buy the collection, it would be like a Kingdom Hearts Sora costume, life size, and
not
there
a
would
body
be
pillow.
Yeah, that's better. You've improved it. So it's a body pillow of Sora, and there's like 25 different zippers on it, and each zipper contains one of the games.
It's the Kingdom Hearts Advent calendar.
Yeah. Oh man. Open a zipper, get a chocolate, get a game. I can't tell what he's gonna do. Maybe. I would think Square's gonna put it out, but I am not on their wavelength.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't heard anything about it. Already leading up, like I would think this kind of thing would be announced, because the game came out pretty late, in the PS4's platform. So
came out, 10 years late. Number 8, Sekiro. I could see this one because the game runs pretty rock solid from what I remember, but like Prey, and like you had mentioned, I think it could benefit from ray tracing and glistening water.
Yeah.
And
the atmosphere in that game was just amazing. If
you could make Sekiro look more like Ghost of Tsushima, that would be a nice way to remaster that game.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just one of those that's going to feel closer to a port, just simply because the game was released in 2019. It hasn't been that long, but to be fair, I also should say a lot of these I don't necessarily see them being remastered immediately once the PS5 and the Xbox are out. I could see them coming, 4 or 5 years down the line, when enough more time has passed and people have kind of already forgotten about some of this stuff. And I see that being like the perfect timing for things like Sekiro or Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3. Bloodborne probably will come out sooner, but
I think so. Yeah, I think Bloodborne is, From Software has been a really nice bullet in Sony's their
arsenal.
Exactly. I was going to say armory. Thank you very much for arsenal. But it's because, Sony them and Nintendo have been succeeding on exclusives, and there's just something really special about like the way Dark Souls has grown, and Bloodborne and Sekiro being their own little private toys. I think it's coming out sooner than later for sure. Number 9, last one on this list so far, and then we have some other runners up we can talk about too, but call it, buddy.
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Now, do you think that Red Dead is going to be more of a platform service? Because this is very anecdotal, but I was talking to the mother of a teenager that used to work at a summer camp here. And when I talked to this kid last year, I think that's when Red Dead came out, he was obsessed with Red Dead. He loved it. And I didn't even really tell him my opinion on it because he was so happy with it. Like, cool. I'm really glad you like it. That's great. And this is 1 year later. And I was talking to his mom. She's like, he's still playing Red Dead.
He's still brewing coffee. He won't study.
Yeah. And maybe a lot of that has to do with how long everything takes in that game. So it's to actually
ask for some horse stimulants for Christmas. I don't know what to do.
It's I could see this one becoming like a Grand Theft Auto where they keep it as a platform and you can just keep adding things. The thing with Red Dead is that Rockstar knows how to do this open world of you could just add a whole other area. All the stories are self-contained, right? Mm-hmm. So you just need to add like 50 NPCs and they all have their own thing to talk about, and there's like a new gang over there you need to deal with, and there's
talk to an NPC and like you take a stagecoach over to like some new area, like I don't know, wherever.
Yeah, because I mean what Red Dead 2 did really well is that almost every NPC you talk to has multiple ways you can interact with them, positively, negatively, and they have a fairly fleshed out story that is really impressive. Like when I compare Red Dead 2 to The Witcher 3, The Witcher 3 looks beautiful and is large, but the NPCs don't really do anything. They're kind of like animatronics at a museum that you walk by. They say something, but they're not really living there. And sure, they look like they're living there, but the characters in Red Dead, you can really interact with them and things can happen and you can accidentally run them over and now the law's involved, or there's, somebody standing near a lake and they teach you how to use like a flying machine or something. There's some like serious work and depth gone into a game that is still gigantic. So I could see them taking that formula and just making another big chunk of it, or maybe messing around with, I don't know what's popular with Red Dead Online. Is it the Battle Royale, or is it more just kind of people role-playing stuff?
If they released a Red Dead Redemption 2, The Great North expansion set in Canada, would you go back to it?
Would I go back to it? If they had said that it was somewhat realistic, where you could, because I know, when you play Yakuza, it's pretty cool because you feel like you're actually doing like a virtual tour of, Kamurocho, is that what it's called?
Oh yeah, Kamurocho.
In those different areas. That's neat. I feel like I'm seeing it. So I think there's maybe a bit of a, for me, if it felt kind of realistic. No, I don't want to play Red Dead again. Red Dead is something I find very impressive, but even if it was modeled after my own backyard,
you don't want like a muskrat skinning minigame.
that would be kind of cool. You know what? If you could scan your friends' faces into it, that's something that you could do. Scan the old scan and skin. That's what I want.
Kind of like those, like Madden or whatever, whichever ones where you could put your faces on the actual player's face.
There was a trend in the early 2000s, I believe, where the graphics weren't that impressive that you just literally taking a screenshot of your face and plastering it on top of this polygon, it actually looked okay. And I love that. Like
are playing you thinking the wrestling games?
Oh yeah, like that type of fidelity where it's just a big blocky polygon sculpture with some wallpaper of your face in it. And like Worms Armageddon, you could do that where you could record your own voice lines for it. I remember playing like one of the NHL games on PC. I was slapping my face in, and I really like that stuff. And I wonder how good they could make that going forward. Whoa! How about that for a remaster? take whatever game you like from your past, put your face in it. Like
the game.
Yeah, like a deep fake. Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's a deep fake of you.
I don't want that.
You don't want to be Sonic?
I don't want to go fast.
No. I always felt like Sonic was battling itself between going really fast and then forcing you to do boring puzzles and wait for platforms. But that's a whole other episode about Sonic. So, moving forward, I think now that we're seeing these... Well, we saw in this generation the half step of development. Are we going to get into more of a PC land of, well, you don't always need to remaster things because you can just play them on a better system with better graphics. And, and they can just put out a patch.
I mean, I was thinking it's going to look a lot more like Steam. Like you're going to, if they have a trend to where we end up shifting to digital purchases, like, obviously this next generation still has physical media. But, I mean, I keep thinking, after that, I feel like we're going to wait till we get satellite internet or something. And you don't have that problem of people, out in the middle of nowhere who can't have access to the digital title because they can't, they don't have a connection to download with. But I think if we get toward that point, you're going to start seeing a digital push so that you're just owning a license of a game. The publishers obviously would love that. And, it would kind of unify everything to make it a lot more PC-like. And then it's going to be kind of that the remasters become not so incredibly important because everything's just going to kind of like it'll just seamlessly kind of go to your next console.
And I would really like that. Like when I think about the PS5 coming out, if they can guarantee me that all of the titles in your library that you've collected with PS Plus, that you've bought on sale, you bought brand new, those are going to work on the PS5. I would feel quite valued as a customer. God, I feel like I'm talking to a marketing team, but I would feel like, okay, I can sell my PS4 and I can buy your PS5 and feel like what I had paid for and invested in this ecosphere of games is being valued. Whereas with Nintendo, I feel like the Switch was just kind of this reboot where they go, all that stuff, you're on your own. You want to still play any Wii U games, you either play on your Wii U or you pay us full price to play this old game.
Well, they already kind of tasted, I mean, the Wii U itself was just sort of that follow-up to the Wii, and that did not do well. So, I mean, I could see them kind of saying, well, why would we do that? I mean, nobody's asking for it from us, so we're just going to go off on this tangent and make this crazy portable system instead.
Yeah, that's true. And the Wii U is the first time that they tried to do that. We'll let you bring your Wii library forward. If you had bought Super Mario 3 on the Wii, you want to play it in the Wii U, that's fine. You just have to pay an extra like $2 or $5 or something. So, yeah, I guess you're right. They just looked at what worked and what didn't. They made a Wii U because the Wii was popular. It didn't work. So they went and reinvented the wheel again. Now, Microsoft has been doing a great job of that where this, like the Xbox One, I think they just doubled down on that. They realized we don't have the third-party people making enough exclusives for us, so we're going to throw money at the problem. We're going to spend way more money than Sony would on backwards compatibility architecture and doing crazy sort of like upscaling, and it's not going to make us any money per game, but it is going to have people, I guess it's like a customer value thing.
And they want to sell that Games Pass too.
Exactly. That's a great point. It definitely, all that work they're putting into it is going towards Games Pass of you just pay us per month. You buy the console, you pay us per month, and all these games you're going to have access to. That's
your digital, like Steam-like library right there. Except you don't even own it. It's not even... Yeah. You're like leasing everything way more transparently. I mean, even Steam, it's kind of like you don't... it's kind of like, do you really own it? I mean, if Steam goes down, do they actually have a backup plan to make sure that you have every game available to download in perpetuity? But in Games Pass, it's very transparent. You stop paying, you can't play it anymore.
That's a great point. I think of Steam like people being up in arms. I paid $1.99 on a Steam sale for that. I'm taking
those games. They'll probably have like a upscaling and all kinds of other support that they try to
Nice.
integrate automatically. NVIDIA will have some hardware and software API that they can use to like automatically do this stuff. It'd be crazy. Like imagine like I know like from a graphics perspective, I don't know how realistic this really is, but like having automated lighting improvements and stuff, like generating the shaders in a better way so that the images look better, and just sort of knowing how to do that without having to hand code anything. That'd be wild.
Yeah, it's funny. We spend most of this episode talking about remasters on probably from a purely console perspective of having locked hardware and being stuck with things. And then as we just shift into this afterthought of what it's like on PC and Games Pass sort of trying to go after what PC's doing, it just seems like, yeah, they've been doing this for years. You have the same game in your library, in your Steam library. It doesn't matter if you have a computer from 2005 or a computer from 2000 now that's cutting edge. You can still play that same game. It's still going to work, and maybe they'll release a patch that lets it look even better.
Sometimes they don't work too seamlessly. Like it's like if you get a really old title that was released maybe during a different release of Windows, then it's kind of there's a chance it might not function anymore.
Well, I enjoyed chatting about some remasters, backwards compatibility, remakes. Thanks for doing this, Horky.
Your pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure.